Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. And I'm extremely excited to be joined by Craig Viner from Baseline Tennis, and also, of course, a tennis analyst in his own right as well. We're going to be talking about the serve evolution of Novak Djokovic and Rafa Nadal, and we're going to be going into that in detail, looking at it from a more mechanical and analytical point of view. Craig, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. It's a pleasure to have you on, and of course, your expertise as well. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to getting into this. So, I think first of all, we'll touch upon Novak Djokovic. A lot of people, I'm sure, watching will know that his serve has notably improved over the past few years, and really now we want to delve into it from a more mechanical point of view and look into it. Craig, I guess if we try and break it down from the take back, that seems to be something that has definitely, I think, it's definitely evolved over the past few years. How's it changed in the past few years?
Yeah, it's first of all, his serve is really underrated. You know, he's you can only be the #1 in the world on the men's side if you've got a good serve, and he's not necessarily the first player who comes to mind if we think of someone who's got a great serve. So there's plenty of videos out there of kind of the evolution of his serve, and I think it's fascinating, first of all, to see that the marginal gains that he's willing to make. Quite drastic, though, some of the changes he's made over the years, and obviously we've been very fortunate that he's been at the top of the game for so long. So he's been in the spotlight, so we've got plenty of kind of footage and match play and stats to kind of analyze. I guess the obvious one, as you rightly said, is in his take back. He kind of seemed, when he kind of first came on the scene, and we were starting to watch him a lot in kind of 2005, that he had this big kind of open, broad-shouldered take back. And the main thing from my perspective, kind of as an analyst and also as a coach, is what I kind of call the inversion of the racket, when it goes from kind of the strings or the frame pointing towards the floor, kind of with the racket head above the handle, kind of in this situation, to then flipping it, to inverting, to then send it over. That's obviously, now it's quite short, his motion, and you can kind of tell that his wrist is really relaxed. But when he first came on the scene, it was this kind of broad take back, and his strings would kind of face up. So he kind of do this kind of motion during his take back, almost lifting his arm to get to this position, and that put a lot of strain on his shoulder and obviously his elbow, which he's had lots of problems with. So I'd say fundamentally that's the main thing, and I can kind of go into why he'd want to change that.
Yeah, of course. So I'm assuming it sounds like it's just made it more compact, right? And so obviously you just mentioned less strain on the body, so it's just, I'm assuming it gives you more control as well, having that type of take back as well.
Yeah, that's kind of the main thing. He was watching early footage. He was almost slapping the ball. If you kind of think of kind of a cricket bowl, it was almost kind of that, where your arms almost fully extended and you're coming over, and that'll happen if you have this big kind of broad take back. It'll feel like you're slapping the ball a bit. Sorry, I have to be quite animated.
No, it's all right. No, it's good. It's good.
This works way better than a podcast. Otherwise, all this motion would be for no reason. But it works on video. So I was almost tempted to get my racket, but I thought that might be a bit. But yeah, exactly. So a lot of the serve is actually kind of, a lot of the manipulation of the ball happens just before impact and is very kind of wrist orientated. But he used to limit himself because of his broad and long take back. It meant that when he came up to contact the ball, he was actually quite limited in what he could do. He was kind of rotating a lot because his take back was very broad. Then when he had come around the ball. So yeah, I think it actually has really helped kind of his disguise, for one. I think his ball toss has changed ever so slightly as well. He used to kind of set the ball up almost kind of John McEnroe style out towards the tram line, whereas now his left arm dissects the baseline, so the ball's more in front of him, and that'll help with, you know, a wrist snap through the ball rather than feeling like you're bowling around it. So yeah, that's obviously helped with with strain on the body. But yeah, his ability to be able to disguise the ball, more of a compact ball toss. Yeah, it's been really interesting, and it just the main thing is him being able to stay relaxed during his serve, because whenever I'm coaching, I always like to think of use the analysis of, or you want to be like a whip, and how everything's kind of loose, but then it straightens at the right time and you get that crack. And that happens now with Djokovic's serve, and it was a bit more of kind of an elongated kind of slapping of the ball rather than a nice quick action. So yeah, lots of reasons why he's changed, and it's been really interesting to see the progression and where he's tried to change things. There was kind of a period in 2009 where it was kind of a hybrid of both, and it looked very kind of awkward. But yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with the relaxation in the serve, because I'd assume that, and it probably makes a lot of sense, that because he was a lot more rigid, especially in his wrists, that he ended up slapping the ball, because someone who played quite a lot of tennis, not obviously at the level that we're talking about, but when you feel tense and you're serving, you feel the difference for sure. And you just need to always tell yourself to relax your wrist and in your body as well, so it's not rigid. And the whip analogy is really good, actually. I might have to use that in the future. But that's a really, really good way of putting it, to be fair. Yeah, you said obviously about the ball toss as well. Has that changed at all in terms of height, do you think, or is it just more a case of, you said about direction and giving himself, I guess you said that before he was more tossing it towards the tram lines, now it's a bit more, I guess, forthright towards the baseline, dissecting that baseline better, which I'm assuming is better for his serve volley aspect, which is definitely come into play more so in the past year or so, and also just in terms of momentum as well, and helping him gain a couple of MPH on the serve as well.
Yeah, but by starting with the ball more in front of you, almost at like 45 degrees with your arm pointing towards the net post, then straight away, first of all, for peripheral, you can see your opponent. You're not having your back to them so much. So in terms of anticipating where they're moving or where their starting position is, that's a key. You're so right with regards to serve and volley. Your body's now moving into the court a little bit more. It does give you more miles per hour because you've got more body weight behind the ball. You're throwing that ball up in front of you and then what I call chasing after it. So not only you are jumping up like you probably previously was, but now you're jumping up and out, so forwards towards the ball. If you time your rotation well, then your hips will be towards the ball as you strike it. So yeah, lots of different reasons. But I think the main thing is, when you change your kind of take back and how long kind of your serve takes, then you have to adjust the height of your ball toss. If you've got a long elongated take back and you have a short ball toss, then all of a sudden your rhythm of your serve is going to change. If you have a more compact serve preparation like he does now, kind of getting into his loading phase, then you need a slightly lower ball toss, because you don't want to be waiting in your what we call the loading position, kind of with your arm raised and your elbow tucked. You don't want to be waiting there, and then you lose all your momentum. So because the first part of his serve has changed, his ball toss has to accommodate. And I'd never say a lower ball toss or lower his ball toss. I'd say the opposite almost. If you have a long elongated serve take back phases, then your ball toss needs to be higher. So yeah, part of that is for efficiency as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess also in terms of repetition as well, for sure. If it's more compact, then I'd assume that helps him being able to gain that muscle memory and also then implement it in matches. You talked about the loading phase. Has anything changed on that front, do you think, from his point of view? Has he made any tweaks?
So his elbow, because kind of the early stages of his career, when he was bringing that arm all the way back, kind of opening his chest, it meant that his elbow was quite low because he was getting his chest up to the ball to reach up to it. Now, because he's a bit more kind of central in his stance, because his elbow is a lot more close, he's more stacked. So when he jumps up to the ball, it's more of kind of like a triple extension. I always like to think of like a rocket kind of blasting off. You know, you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and it's all very kind of upwards and out. If you have this wide elbow, then you've got a wider base. So in terms of jumping up to the ball, you're less efficient. So yeah, his shorter take back has obviously affected his elbow position, which means he can come up and out to that ball a lot quicker with a lot more snap.
That makes a lot of sense. One thing that I noticed, I don't know if it's something that, again, it might be to do with the take back and the loading phase, is it almost seems that he is a little bit more upright, if that makes sense, when he's serving. And I'm assuming that by being more upright, and in the past it looked like almost he was kind of bending the knees a lot and then kind of going up. He's almost working against gravity, and he's kind of taking away some of his advantages as well with his height, I'd assume, right? Is that correct? Am I correct in thinking that? Yeah,
because he had a slightly wider base, he'd have to... Yeah, it'd have to be more of a load to get up to it. In terms of, thinking of, sheer mass, he was a bit two-dimensional. Now he's a bit more 3D with being able to kind of corkscrew up to the ball. That motion of up and out, rather than if you've got a wider base, then you've got to work a lot harder to get up to that ball. You've got to bring your feet closer together first before then moving up and out. So yeah, I think it's fascinating. Necessarily what goes on behind the scenes and the reasonings for it could be different. A lot of it is injury, or my shoulder feels sore, my elbow feels sore, my wrist feels sore. I can't imagine playing 5 hours of tennis at the Australian Open, and it's got to come down to efficiency. A lot of these changes, and people do get hung up on the ball toss quite a lot. But ultimately, how you're throwing the ball up will, why you make changes to that is just to get more consistency with where you're placing the ball. So yeah, no, it's a good observation.
No, agreed. Efficiency is definitely the right word, I think, for Novak Djokovic as well. To be fair, everything in his game and how he's evolved seems to be through trying to improve efficiency in his game and obviously longevity. And we've seen that. I think the serve is a really good example of that. Obviously, I think we talked off camera, and I said to you that I'd never ever seen him serve the most amount of aces in a Grand Slam in his whole career. And as you said, it is an underrated tool for sure, but it's not one that you, as you said, represent with, for example, John Isner, Roger Federer, a serve where he's putting down a lot of aces in large quantities per match, whereas Australian Open, I think he served over 100 aces last year in 2021 in that tournament, which was definitely a staggering stat at the time. And I just thought, wow, okay. And you then start seeing, I guess, we talk about, so what, from 2005, you said, until now, so 16-year period where he's continually made tweaks. And then you see the fruits of his labor in the last few years now, and it starts showing very prominently, not just in his games, where I'm assuming, you can see that, of course, but in the stats as well, which makes, obviously, then raises eyebrows and says, "Oh, hold on, what's he doing?" So,
also just on that quickly, with a more compact serve, you're also giving your opponents less time to kind of read your serve. If you've got a higher ball toss, and your ball toss is kind of varying from over your left shoulder to over your right shoulder, then that's giving your opponents more time. I think one of the reasons Andy Roddick's serve was so effective is how kind of short and sharp the action was. It was kind of, from the start of his serve to when that ball shot past you, it was relatively minimum. And obviously, the more compact your serve is, the kind of less things there are to go wrong. I kind of always thought of Thomas Berdych and Sharapova with their higher ball toss, and that ball toss is falling for such a long time. You have to time it so well, because that ball is then accelerating down towards you. So yeah, I think it's definitely helped his numbers on serve just by shortening the overall time it takes for him to execute his serve.
Yeah, a lot more moving parts, I'd assume, right? With obviously, which is what it sounds like he had originally when he first came onto tour, and it seems like now there's less of that. So I guess, we're talking about the efficiencies, right? And it makes a huge amount of sense that he's gone to that. Is there anything else in terms of I guess, components to his serve that you've noticed over the years that he's, I guess, tweaked to gain those efficiencies?
Yeah, I think the obvious thing is how deliberate he is now when he starts his serve with this kind of relaxed wrist. He almost does it deliberately, and it's something that I'm sure we're going to go and talk about in a minute. And it's something that Nadal's adopted as well. If you're kind of over gripping the racket, then you're not going to get that final kind of whip effect that I talk about. Whereas if your wrist is nice and almost limp and nice and relaxed, almost as if you were holding the racket with 3 fingers instead of all 5, then you can get the racket dip and you can get a nice kind of snap and pop through the ball as you hit it. And that's the first thing that people will see when he steps up to serve, how deliberately he now relaxed that wrist. So yeah, that's so key to anyone out there looking to improve a little bit of miles per hour on their serve. Just make sure you're nice and relaxed.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. I can speak from experience as well, just from obviously a club level. But yeah, it makes a huge amount of difference. And as you said, you can see it's so deliberate with Djokovic, and everything just seems so relaxed. So yeah, just really, really just fluid, I think is the right word for it, in his service action now. And it just seems effortless almost, which is, I guess, how you want it to be. And obviously that's the same type of attribute that was attributed to Roger Federer and has been for a number of years, is how effortless the serve looks. And I feel like Djokovic has now got to that stage where, as you said, less moving parts, and now definitely very efficient in the way that he serves. That's a really, really good point. Is there anything else before we move on to obviously Nadal and his tweak? Is there anything else that you can think of that maybe he has made changes to that definitely have had the effect, or a positive or negative, to be fair? I think most of it is positive from what we've been discussing, to be fair. I think it all sounds good. But yeah, anything else to touch upon?
Yeah, I suppose with he's always had a great kind of like a finishing position. So kind of ball tuck, his kind of arm tucks up and under the ball, and he's always been quite quite compact in the way he lands as well. And obviously, if winning a lot of first serve points is also to do with how well you hit your first strike after your first serve. So we actually did a video on Baseline about Tsitsipas and how he struggles more so on the ad side than Juice because of how he lands. And Djokovic has always had great fundamentals when it comes to his first step after his serve. He's worked on that a little bit with regards to how he lands and how wide his hips are. If you land and you're very narrow, then obviously you're going to have to, or you're more likely to have to take a balanced step after you land. Whereas if you land and you're kind of wider, then you're already in a split step position, or you can take a little adjustment to split step, and then you're ready for your first shot after serve. And again, I'm actually watching a lot of YouTube videos. They kind of cut away from that before you see the impact or the full impact that it has on their first shot after first serve. And that's one of the things that throwing the ball toss in front of you a little bit more will do. You'll land more inside the court, and you'll have your hips and shoulders facing your opponent rather than to the side. So you're ready. You're more naturally in a more balanced position, ready to reset and hit your first shot after serve. So he's always been good at that, but he's worked a little bit on his balance.
Well, that's a really good point. Yeah,
from what I can see, obviously I don't know the ins and outs of their training camp, but yeah, he's so balanced and such an athlete as well, and so flexible. But the way he really tucks as he lands, I definitely encourage people to kind of try and replicate that. Yeah,
definitely. It sounds like, obviously, well, it definitely would help in terms of 1+ shot being in that split step. Or something similar to, as you said, for sure. And I think that you don't normally see him, to be fair, actually, off the top of my head. Obviously, we've seen a lot of matches, and I'm sure there are instances, but there's not many instances where there's, a forehand coming at his toes, and you just think, and he really, really struggles to get into the right position. He might hit it long, he might hit it wide, but in terms of actually being in the right position to hit that 1+ shot, he's normally in that position, which I guess then attests to what you were saying about the fact that he is so good in terms of his landing phase after serving, which people, as you said, don't really place a huge amount of importance on. But of course, it is important because once you can hit a great serve, it doesn't mean it's not coming back at you, and then it's about how you prepared for it. So
absolutely, and sometimes the harder you hit your serve, the quicker it comes back. So even more important, you need that balanced position needs to be, or your reset position after your serve. And majority of points, as we know, I think it's 70% are over in 0 to 4 shots. So actually, when you look at someone's first serve kind of win percentage, actually it's just as important their first shot after first serve. So you could actually take some miles per hour off your serve in order to get a more balanced kind of position after you've landed, and that would be just as important, if not more important, than getting 2 miles an hour more on your serve. If you kind of negate your kind of landing position after your serve in favor of a few more miles per hour, I'd say you're doing it the wrong way around.
No, agreed, 100%. You okay to move on to Nadal?
Yes, I mean, yeah, let's go for it. Just wrapped up 15 years in 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm definitely undersold all the work that's gone into his game.
No, I think it's probably worth noting as well that I think since obviously he's worked with Boris Becker and Ivan Isavic, who are both amazing servers historically, I think there's probably a reason why he's brought those people in, because that was the part of his game that he knew that if he could improve that to a certain level, from a longevity point of view as well, shorten points, serve volley more, which is something that people didn't, associate with Djokovic at all, then it would help. And I think he's right.
It's a great point. It's a really good point. And Ivan Isavic was great at the kind of the final phase just before he contacted the ball, kind of wrist manipulation and what he was doing, just before. I've heard a lot of kind of coaches and people talk about, in order to slice the ball, you throw the ball wider so you can come around it. Whereas that's not the case anymore. It's all to do with how you throw the ball up and how you approach the ball with your racket. And then it's the last minute kind of wrist manipulation through the ball, and that's something that Goran's definitely worked on with Djokovic, and it means he's got great disguise, and he can hit a flat ball, slice ball, kick not so much, you have to throw it slightly further behind you, but he's been able to adapt his serve by having a more consistent ball toss, and it's all to do with a more compact take back. So yeah, it's working well, but we'll have to wait a few more weeks to see him in action.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much, Craig. I do appreciate it. Do you want to shout out your baseline tennis and anything else that you're working on that people might be interested in?
Yeah, of course. So check out Baseline Tennis. We're on YouTube as well as socials. So yeah. We've got lots of videos. I think we're up 91 videos. Our latest one is on actually the slice in tennis and how it's Ashley Barty and Berrettini. Actually, it was my own voice, my own bit of work. Obviously, looking at how the slice has evolved and how it's not just a defensive shot, and how these two kind of have reinvented the slice. It's really interesting. Something you think it's just a defensive shot. It's actually how they use it as kind of a counter-punching play. So that's my interpretation on how these two players use it. So yeah, check it out, Baseline Tennis on YouTube and socials.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I saw that actually. Really interesting, for sure.
Thanks.
And yeah, but yeah, that was really good. Cool. Thank you very much, Craig. I do appreciate it, guys. Please do remember to like the video if you don't mind, and subscribe to the channel if you're interested to see more content like this. And of course, do check out Baseline Tennis as well. Some fantastic videos, as Craig just mentioned. Of course. Thank you. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.